Well, you mentioned Hal and his amazing work. We've been able to talk with Hal a few times, like we said in the introduction. Maybe it'd be awesome to go to you next, Hal. We've heard your own personal story of how you acquired these homes more as a business move and just thought that these people were not being treated as well as they could have been. And we learned about your journey through, experimenting with feeding these people vegetarian diets and trying to make their food a little bit better and eventually getting over to kind of lower carb and keto diets. Can you tell us your kind of experience with Melissa as she was coming into your facility and how that all kind of went down?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Her sister did reach out to me. I guess her sister saw me on a podcast or something like that. We started talking, and then she said, "Well, Melissa's two daughters live right near your home. Why don't you said, what can they come over and take a look?" I'm sure, I'd love it. So they came over, took a look, liked what they saw, and so. We kept talking and we set them up with Eric's company, A Mind for All Seasons. So before Melissa came down to us, they, I don't know, was it a couple weeks, maybe a month that you spent with Matt from Eric's company, A Mind for All Seasons? I don't know, maybe you talked to Eric too. And I don't know, maybe Eric, you want to just jump in real quick and say your first impressions or Matt's first impressions when Melissa called you guys and set it up, and then we'll continue back to my story.
Yeah, thanks, Hal. And yeah, it was about a month before you had an opening and Melissa was able to move. And I actually had one of the initial conversations with Melissa, and I haven't shared this on any other podcast. We've done some interviews on this, but what I haven't shared is, Melissa, how absolutely blown away I am every time we do an interview like this and I listen to you talking, because I can't ever forget what it was like to talk to you the first time. And it was like hundreds of other people that I've worked with who have a really difficult time finding the words. And we'd go through some of the conversation and it would feel like things were coming off clearly and that you were grasping it. And then you turn around and ask a question that showed me, she really didn't get that, did she? And I don't say that to be harsh in any way, but to just highlight the contrast. I wish I had recorded our early conversations because they were very circular. And to just quantify it a little bit, when you got to Hal's community, he did a SLUMS test, a St. Louis University mental status exam, and you scored 15 out of 30 points. And by the time you left, you scored 28 out of 30.
Yeah, let's maybe put that into perspective. What does that mean?
Yeah, what that means is that you qualified for a dementia diagnosis and then you moved to a normal adult score. And I completely see it every time we talk now, because as many times as I've seen this, and we've written over 1,000 treatment summaries in just the last 4 years. So it's not like we haven't seen this before. But it still amazes me every time I'm with someone like you and I see the contrast between our initial discussion and how circular and how repetitive and how lost you were and how difficult it was for you to find words and to even remember names. And then we get on a call like this and you've got everybody's names down. You even referenced in one of our more recent interviews, you referenced your own lab work and you were talking about some of that off the cuff. And I wanted to pick my jaw up off the ground. It still just blows my mind after 23 years of serving people living with dementing illnesses that I can see something like this. And I love it. I never, ever get tired of seeing these kind of results with people.
Yeah, well, Eric, I wish you had also taped it, the first one. I'm curious as to, I know what a mess I was,
Yeah, two quick stories about that. First, she just texted me last week or two and said, "Hey, we never really went over my kidney results. Can you send those to me?" Like she remembered what we did go over and what we didn't in her final labs with us. And then also I remember as her memory was improving, I went to her one time and she was asking about, or I went to her and said, "Hey, your latest report came out. Should I send it to you?" And she's like, "You emailed me that 3 days ago." And I'm like, "Holy cow, your memory's getting better than mine." So it just seeing the progression in the stages. So getting back to the story, yes. So Eric and his team worked really well with her for like the first month to set this up for success. Then she came down and you could see all the problems. You could see the tremors. She was walking with a cane. She was, I don't want to sound harsh either, but a little overweight. She was, you know, the memory thing definitely wasn't there. She was not remembering stuff at half an hour after I talked to her about it, things like that. So what made me really optimistic and excited is she said that right from the first thing. I think she said it earlier here, is whatever you guys want me to do, I'm in. And that makes it a lot easier, because I do have other people, even if the family's all pushing for it, the residents like, I don't want to do this anymore. Eric's working right now with one of my best friends from college. His father-in-law's having some issues. I think the mother-in-law is too. And the father-in-law is like, you know, why do I have to give up a rum and Coke? I've been drinking that the same my whole life. You know, why do I, this is stupid kind of stuff. And so that makes it a lot harder. With Melissa, it was, I'm 100% committed to this. Let's see what we can do. And that just makes it so much easier. So we started her with the ketogenic diet right away. I just recently, I was working through trying to find some good cooks, because my caregivers, bless their hearts, they're wonderful people, as Melissa will testify. They work really hard at getting people up and showered and bathed. And we've got people who have incontinence and insulin issues and, you know, all this stuff that they got to take care of. And I was kind of for a long time expecting them to do the cooking as well. And what I found was the meal started well in the morning with breakfast, and then at lunch they got a little worse. And then by dinner time, it's peanut butter and jelly and macaroni and cheese. And so I'm like, this isn't working. It's not the fault of the caregivers. So I hired some cooks and we sat down and said, okay, we need to make ketogenic meals. And I introduced her to a wonderful lady who became Melissa's best friend, Maria Emmerich. And she helped long distance kind of train my cooks into how to make ketogenic meals and how to make meals that tasted really good, as well as be really healthy for you. And Melissa ate those religiously. I couldn't believe how quick she gave up snacks or cravings. I don't know, went away, or she was very disciplined and never asked me for snacks. And a couple of weeks into it, she was like, I don't miss them. I'm good. And so we started with that. We had another lady we were working with at our facility, and her husband brought in this portable sauna. And so we were using that every day with Melissa. We started with a red light panel that we put up to Melissa's face every day for about 10 minutes. And then I invested in a helmet for red light that would go around her head and really work on her brain to energize the mitochondria in there. We bought these, and these are all recommendations from Eric, and I'm sure he'll go into more of the science behind it, but we bought some audio-visual entrainment devices, which are basically glasses and a headset and little ear things that send little electrical pulses. The headset have sounds in them at pulsing at certain frequencies. Glasses have lights that pulse at a certain frequency. They help relax. They bring your brain waves down. All those things we kind of just threw the kitchen sink at Melissa. But it was guided by Eric and his team, and I'm going to let him go into more of the details. And it started with lab work, and then it ended with lab work to see how she's progressing. And some of her lab work was phenomenally better. It was really neat to see. You know, some moved a little, some stayed the same. Some she was already optimized on, so it wasn't as big a deal. But we just continued pressing day after day and day after day. She just kept getting better and better. She was able to go out more. One of the big milestones along the way was she went out with her daughter to coffee and lunch, and they spent 3 hours together. I don't know what they had for lunch. I will hopefully didn't cheat. But at the end of it, her daughter said to her, Mom, I've been with you for 3 hours and you haven't forgot a single thing. And, you know, I was like bouncing off the walls when she told me that story. and it just kept getting better and better. Like I had a trainer that comes in and exercises with her, like Melissa was talking about. He started taking her out shopping and everything. We started doing trips, and she started going over to the other homes and hanging out with those people. And you could tell she's just coming out of her shell and coming back into society. And it was just the coolest thing. And it was really neat. I got to take her to the airport at the final day. I got a little video of her walking out of the house and throwing her cane away. The only bad part of that day was saying goodbye and having her go to Washington. So ever since then, I've been like, your daughters are down here. Please move back. So that's kind of our story. And maybe it'd be good for Eric to sort of fill in the gaps of, I'm sure people are very interested in the science behind all this. I bring the anecdotes.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in and add a little bit of perspective here. And Melissa, would you be okay if I shared a few specific things about your initial blood work that would kind of help people understand what this approach is all about? And right from the get-go, I just want to say that brain health is never about one thing. And people are looking for a magic pill or an easy solution. And brain disorders are kind of like other lifestyle-driven diseases like heart disease. Heart disease is not about one thing either. And if you want to make a difference in these lifestyle diseases that develop slowly over often decades of time, you have to address as many different factors as you can. You also have to recognize that the brain and the body are not separate. They're all part of one system. And so you have to take the entire system into account. If I could divide the approach into maybe 3 or 4 different areas, I think that might simplify it for people. So number one, there are some foundational things that we have to pay attention to. Foundational things that are lifestyle driven, that you can't medicate or supplement your way out of. These are things like, how are you fueling your body? What are you eating and how is it affecting you? And do you have chronically elevated blood sugar because of how you're eating, because you're having ice cream constantly? When Melissa first came to us and we tested some metabolic parameters, Melissa's A1C, her average sugar, the amount of sugar bound to a red blood cell, was 5.9. So she was pre-diabetic. And if we looked at her fasting insulin, it was like 18, and it should be more like 4 to 6. So she already had metabolic syndrome. She didn't meet the qualification of being a type 2 diabetic, but she was definitely pre-diabetic and headed down that road. Well, yeah, there are some medications that might impact how your body metabolizes sugar, but fundamentally, the most important thing that you could do is to say, oh, maybe I shouldn't eat ice cream all the time, because provoking that insulin response over and over and over and having chronically high sugars, that's your problem. So that's a lifestyle-driven issue. Sleep is a lifestyle thing. You can't medicate or supplement your way out of poor sleep, and you have to sleep to be superior. And you have to stay socially active if you want to have really good brain health. And you've got to engage in good physical activity, because that does amazing things for our brains. And we could add to the list, but that would be the number one thing: lifestyle-driven decisions. And then number two, we looked at actual deficiencies. We did a lot of blood work. So you might go to your primary care doctor and get a comprehensive metabolic panel and a complete blood count and maybe 2 or 3 other tests at a regular checkup. We tested a lot more things than that. We were looking at neurologically active hormones. We're looking at certain antioxidants. We were looking at inflammatory markers. And you can think of each of those factors as like a potential hole in the bottom of Melissa's boat. And we were just looking to identify what is sinking her ship so that we can start patching those holes through lifestyle decisions, through supplements, through medication where appropriate. And here are a few of the things that we found. People that are listening to this particular channel are kind of in the low carb, carnivore, keto space anyway. So it might be interesting to know why it is that Melissa feels so amazing when she eats a keto or carnivore diet. I think it has everything to do with her genetics, because Melissa has an MTHFR genetic problem She's got a C677T variant, which means that she's less efficient using B vitamins and converting them to an active form. Well, the consequence of that is long-term, you could get brain shrinkage. It also means that your detox pathway is compromised a little bit. It's going to affect neurotransmitter production. This is a big deal. It has a lot to do with having low energy. It has everything to do with why she was probably depressed for 20 years, because her body wasn't using B vitamins and she wasn't getting a lot dietarily anyway. Her homocysteine level was 17.6. Now, homocysteine is an inflammatory marker. It's an amino acid that when it gets elevated, it's really damaging to the brain and to the heart. And in about the last year and a half, there was a study that came out that said if your homocysteine is chronically 15 or higher, you double your Alzheimer's risk with just that one factor. And here she was sitting at 17. So we put her on a very specific B complex with the vitamins in their activated form. And then we started measuring homocysteine levels, making sure they were coming down. Her folic acid was like 5.6, if I remember right. And really, we wanted it over 15, preferably 20 or higher. That one factor alone likely was a big contributor to her depression. But when you eat animal protein, you're getting a really good meal of methylated B vitamins. Animal protein sources are one of the places in our diet where we get B vitamins that have been converted to their active form. And most people that have an MTHFR genetic problem don't feel very good unless they get some animal protein every day. We've seen some people that don't have this issue and they can eat a vegetarian or vegan diet and feel pretty decent. But then we've seen other people that have tried a vegetarian or vegan diet at some point in their lives, and they feel absolutely awful. And I think this is a big reason why. So when you start digging into factors like this, we could go on. I don't want to bore people with all the logistical and lab-based parameters. But when you start going through some of this, the pieces begin to fit together and you get a picture of why someone experiences some of the symptoms that they do and why they feel differently when they make changes like, oh, I'm going to eat steak for my birthday instead of a great big bowl of ice cream. Melissa, what has it meant to you to learn a little bit about those parameters? You've shared so much what it means to make these shifts and how you feel. But to learn some of the science of it, I don't think I've ever asked you how you feel about the science of it and what that's done for you. So I'm kind of curious.
I had the benefit of growing up in a home where we actually ate pretty healthy. My dad was Mexican. We ate a lot of beans, grew up with all those traditions. I actually followed my dream to become an RN. 2 years into it, I injured my back, and that ended my nurse on caregiving career, unfortunately. But I knew healthy, and through COVID and all this, during this time period, I had become more severely depressed. I have been living under a very evil person for over 3 years who is constantly making noise. And, I would sit in my apartment and just be depressed and not go out and eat my ice cream. It just was crazy. And I knew the whole time it was not the right thing to do. I was self-destructive. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm actually getting into nurturing myself and understanding how one of my mantras is food is medicine. When you're eating real food, everything else falls into place. You add the physical to it, of course, the mobility. I just happen to have a hyperbaric chamber half a block from me. I can walk to it. I've walked past it. I live in a little 3-long-block stretch of community called the Issaquah Highlands in the foothills of the Cascades. And my little section has the one wellness center for the King County area. So it's amazing. And I can walk to that. I have a lake I walk to. All those things add to continuing this journey of gaining more confidence in my new life, my new being, who I am, and what life means to me today. I love food. I'm a foodie. I spend several days a week prepping. And that's the key to success for me, is the preparation. I'm enjoying all of it. The eggs, the meat. I eat a lot of beef. I was actually let's see, Hal, did you talk about vegetarian? No, it was Eric. We were actually vegetarians for 12 years, thinking it was the healthy way to eat. You know, the egg whites only, the no chicken skin. I cannot believe all those blunders in the search for health. When I look back to those efforts, this is the real game right here. This is the real thing, is taking care of our bodies. That is our mission in life, so that we can live it. And I am constantly amazed and passionate about sharing my amazing journey and miracle.
Yeah,
I love that you
that.
keep calling it a miracle. I absolutely love that.